What does it take to make workshops work? And how can we facilitate collaboration that sticks and leads to results? My name is Miriam Hatness, and with the Workshops Work podcast, I'm on the mission to find the magic ingredients that make workshops work. Today with me on the show is Dan Levy, and we talk about facilitating innovation, what futuring means, and how to get the right people in the room. So stay tuned. And by the way, if you don't have pen and paper at hand to take your own notes, why don't you visit workshops.work and download my free one-page summary. And now enjoy the show. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you, Miriam?
I am very well and looking forward to our conversation about futuring.
Awesome. So where do we begin? You tell me, where do we begin?
We begin at the start. When did you start calling yourself a facilitator?
Oh, phew, I thought when did I start calling myself a facilitator? I would imagine it was most probably about 4 years ago. Yeah, it would be 4 years ago. And I think officially anyway, and the thing that really enabled me to have the confidence to be able to label myself in the role of a facilitator was the design sprint program. So I have a lot of credit to, pay a lot of dues towards the design sprint program, because I think, like many other people in my world, it provided us with a very comprehensive method to be able to help organizations progress ideas and have conversations.
And when you say your world, what do you mean?
Okay, so I'm now full-time. I facilitated when I did that, but I'm now a full-time facilitator. I class myself as a full-time facilitator. But before that time, I was pretty much, my career trajectory had started in design, had got into user experience, and then moved into strategy. And it was a response to the changing landscape of the industry. And this, I might show my age here, but so when I started my career, it was a career some of your listeners would have heard of things like Director and Lingo and Macromedia and CD-ROMs, those old things that we now tie to the branches of our tree in the garden to scare off all the birds from stealing the fruit. But back in the day, they were a thing. Companies spent big bucks on them. And then you had social media, and I was working at a broadcast company, Fox Sports. And what we were starting to see, that there's lots of channels. So to be able to understand the channels, they needed people that had, I would like to say, domain expertise, but let's just say domain confidence enough to hold a room, have a conversation, and start to help make sense of all these different new platforms or methods of communication.
What do you think when you think of, I'm triggered by what you said about confidence and expertise. And when you think of facilitation, what do you think is more important, confidence or expertise?
I think you need expertise to have confidence. It's almost like people who say, they're saying you kind of live it until you make it, or whatever that saying is. It's kind of like that. I mean, as a facilitator very early on, and actually I was having a conversation with somebody about this. It's almost, you're able to go different levels. You have different levels of awareness in the room, which enables you to have more confidence, because it becomes, or you're in flow, and it's almost natural, where you have, Daniel Stillman talks about different levels of listening and different levels of awareness, where you're not worried so much on the content, you're then worried about the reading the room and the energy and the vibe in the room, and that manifests itself in confidence. You're able to kind of like glide through the energy in the room. So when I hear the term confidence as a facilitator, sometimes you see facilitators that seem confident, but it can almost come across as arrogance, and that loses the room. So I think there's a fine line of confidence and humility.
Yes, I totally agree. And we do need the expertise first, as you said, in order to let go of the script, let go of control. And then we need the confidence so that the participants can actually trust us in the process.
Yeah, and also something I'm learning and I'm trying to impart on our team is our role as a facilitator. So we work with companies and there's very, very smart people that have deep domain expertise. And our natural state as a human being, as somebody within the creative services field, is to try and solve it. However, as a facilitator, we are solving it within the conversation. Our expertise, our domain expertise, is in the way that we help create the space, enable that trust, and make sure that we can guide people through the conversation. That's our role in the conversation. And that, I think, once you accept that as your role as the facilitator, you can have confidence because you can have comfort in the fact you're in a place and you've done your preparation. You can move and weave and read the energy, and you're not trying to solve the problems and getting involved in conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a long time. It's taken a while for me to naturally accept that, not have to force myself into, taking that step back.
Yeah, it's almost like a human urge. We hear a problem and we want to help, we want to solve it, whether it's in the personal life or professional life. I think there's always this, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Let me help you.
Well, yeah. Absolutely. And also, like, from More Space's perspective, we don't just help with facilitation, we also help with strategy. So we get to the end of a workshop, and often organizations and teams we work with, they say, what next? And because I come from a making background and the team and the resources, the capabilities of the team are able to provide and facilitate that method to help them create the prototype, to create whatever it is. It's really important for me to compartmentalize our role and our value at each stage of that process. So it's really important as a facilitator. I'm not thinking about the next part. It's just getting to this part and leading everybody to an outcome that helps them progress where they need to go.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important point that you're making, that many clients then ask, so now what? And usually this is where the role of the facilitator actually ends, which can then also create lots of confusions, because if the group is not doing anything, or if the client not doing anything with the results that the group came up with, actually the official responsibility of the facilitator just ends, and then they have to pick it up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So what we're finding with a lot of our engagements now, because they're longer term engagements, and the way we structure our programs and our facilitation is to work more long term with an organization to help build in that cadence, whether it's a workshop culture, whether it's to help capability building in regards to the design sprint, the design thinking tools. We are also able to demonstrate performance increase, capability uplift through the conversations we're having, through the way we track conversations, through the way we record where the team are at every stage of that process. So we're trying to not just help lead teams to great outcomes, to be able to design and tackle whatever it might be, whether it's product, process, strategy, or service. It's also how are people developing within their roles and dealing with problems independently of More Space being attached. There is second level impacts of them working with us, where they'll go away and they'll be able to use the tools independently.
You mentioned the word space a couple of times, and your company name is More Space for Light.
Yes.
So what's the story behind that, and what role do shades play when it comes to light?
Well, are there shades these days? All I see is there's polemics. Everything's very binary. You're one of these or you're one of that. But I believe in shades. I believe there's more than 50 shades of grey. So the name More Space, it's actually really interesting because I take pride in the fact that I haven't had to reverse engineer a story, an interesting story around the company, and try and come up with a lovely mission statement, etc. The name Moorespace actually comes from the true CEO of the company, Max, my eldest, who's now 8. And I was going through a phase where in my previous life as an employee, I really didn't feel like I was fulfilling my potential and what I wanted to do. And I didn't feel what I was doing in my role was providing the service and fulfillment that we could and should be doing. And I wasn't in charge of that because I was working for other people. So I'd have to kind of work within their boundaries. And I was going through a phase in my life where I was reading books by somebody like Vince Frost, Design Your Life, and trying to understand what a life of meaning was. And you know, my father had just passed away, and time had a lot more of an impact on me, especially being a dad. And I you know, I'm a dedicated person. I was working a lot of hours. And one night I was home, and I was home every night, but one night, another late night, I was home and we was putting my little one to bed, Max, who was 3 at the time. And he said, "Mummy, I want more space for life." And I said to my wife, I said, "That is amazing. What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, he says it every night, Dan. It means he wants more space to play. He's not ready to go to bed yet. He wants, you know, he's still got life left." And that was so profound. The first thing I did as being from a design, I was like, I haven't got a business plan, but I've got a brand. I've got something. I stand for this. And this is something I felt that I could bring to other clients. I could, you know, that I could lead and help provide that space for people to feel confident and comfortable to explore. And when we started Moorespace was very much, I think it's going to be a user experience, because there was always a disconnect from strategy to execution. Something kind of didn't happen in the middle. Nobody would really take responsibility for that. But what I found more and more through the conversations that we were having, well, it was me, now it's we, there was a more of a fit and a more value we were providing at a strategic level, because organizations just could, because they were so silo based, and me as a lateral thinker, I could kind of weave in between these different silos and these politics and use the tools of design not as a craft, but as a capability to facilitate conversations. And slowly, more and more, I was able to help people overcome these big challenges by helping them to break them down into manageable chunks. And then the light came to them in regards to they knew what to do. They had more space to think about the bigger picture things, because we were able to take a lot of that stress away.
Beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Very inspiring. And still, I wonder if we have too much light and we don't see the shades. I think that, so yeah, coming back to the question, what role do shades play?
Well, I mean, you could say, and this could be a very tenuous link to design thinking, it could be that there is no definitive answers. And the method that we play in the way we work is the term, I think, is one of the most overused and horrible terms you can use within a meeting room, because I think it is always the person that owns the I think with the great parking spot and the highly paid position that says I think and prevents any further exploration. And that's just a shade of grey. Mm. It's not a black and white. People take that as that I think is a dead end, or we must proceed in that direction. Design thinking forces continuous inquiry. And obviously it's not this kind of self-eating cyclical method of let's just keep testing, let's just keep going out. It should obviously fit in with the business. But the grey is we're testing, we're validating, we're learning, we're incorporating, we're growing. And that's where I think the grey is. The grey is all about working in that grey of the unknown. And that is where these new ideas, these new futures, and these being able to kind of debunk these risks and recognize them as opportunities or threats to be able to have the knowledge on how to navigate and overcome.
I like that. the shades being the unknown.
Yeah,
it will fill up with
everything,
light through the group.
I mean, exactly, Miriam. Like you look 2 years ago, even February last year, or January last year. How many people would have thought that they would undergo forgetting this, what happened in the world, but how many people would have thought that they'd be forced into some sort of digital transformation within a month, where the whole organization would have to re-platform onto Zoom, and they'd need all this, like they'd need to homeschool and all this. That's an unknown. Like how can we negotiate that? How can we make that easier? How can we help an organization still be able to collaborate, create prototypes, to have conversations? How can we connect? That's a massive grey area. Like nobody knows. We learn by doing and validating.
Yeah, and I think a lot of shades were revealed from this suddenly remote life, where all the broken systems became apparent.
And what scares me most about that, Miriam, just is whether they will go back to being broken. Is this just a reflex? Are we just stretching the elastic band, and then we're gonna go back into the office and it'll go back to business as usual? Like, what can we take away from this experience?
Yeah, and I think from what I observe is that some are really taking this opportunity to rework on the processes, on the communication channels, and then they will go back to a better version of what they had because they had to fix it. And those who are just struggling because it's just too complex, it became too complex or maybe too complicated to work remotely, they will struggle, and they might go back to the just old crap or even a worse state, because a lot of mojo got lost along the way, I think, if you didn't take the opportunity of fixing it.
And a lot of the problems anyway, regardless of technology, come back to people and culture and ensuring that people feel connected and engaged within the workplace and valued. And it doesn't matter how you re-platform that, that is really what defines the success of the company. I mean, I've listened to podcasts about like places in America, like cinemas, where they've actually pulled together. They acknowledged the problem, but there was such a strong-knit team that even though they'd have to, optimize the team, they still managed to survive. Even look at Airbnb and what they had to do in their transformation and how they've come out of it, and even managed to get an IPO during such a stressful time. It's inspiring because it's such strong leadership and such a strong culture.
Yeah. And this makes me curious. So you help companies or teams to innovate. And what is the difference between being forced to innovate because of an external shock like the pandemic? So you have to go through the digital transformation, whether you want it or not, whether you prepared for it or not. And others have been thinking about their digital transformation maybe for years and have hired teams to go through that. Where do you see the opportunities and maybe the difficulties in guiding this process of becoming a better version of an organization?
I mean, you just said it earlier where you said complicated. You corrected yourself from complex to complicated.
Yes.
I believe systems are generally complicated. People are complex. And it's the combination of both that causes the complexity. In terms of, I don't profess to have the answer, but in regards to forced innovation, I believe innovation is an outcome. You do things and they result in innovation. I don't believe you put the innovation sausage into the innovation sausage machine and you get innovation that comes out of it. I don't believe it's magic or anything like that. There's Dobbin's 10 types of innovation, and I'm sure people that read it are super disappointed that there's 10 types, and then really very spectacular, and they can be really small, but because everyone almost expects, or I think the common perception of innovation is it's some sort of silver bullet, but using Zoom to conduct a retro could be an innovation because of all of the efficiencies and the effectiveness that are a result of it, and the way of thinking, etc., and how that kind of cascades across the organization. But generally, if I'm answering your question correctly, most of the challenge in regards to getting or leading a team through any kind of transformational process is priming the team and having the right people to be able to start that journey or seed that journey.
And then given that you are right and there's no magic machine for innovation, then actually the sudden shock of being forced to innovate or being forced to do something else or differently might have a higher chance actually to lead to this innovation, as you just said.
Well, yeah, so without friction, there's no fire. And the great thing about the Zoom and the people switching to remote, I mean, look at the tremendous outcomes that came out of it. I mean, homeschooling. I mean, for myself as a business owner, I was forced to spend more time with my family. And I use the word forced like it's a negative thing. It was the most cherished part of the last few, of more space, of the journey of more space. That year was like the best thing ever. I got to connect with my whole family so much more. And I didn't have to feel guilty about doing other pieces of work. From a work perspective, we launched Future of Now and we switched everything, our portal completely across to digital. And we haven't mastered it. We're on a continuous learning journey, but it enabled the organization to shift into a whole new world of remote facilitation and build up our competency levels and help lead teams and organizations on how to conduct themselves in that environment and how to re-platform their modes of work into that environment. So I think the outcomes and the consequences of such a sudden radical change, people work out how to cope. And once they work out to cope and they get in this kind of chaotic mode, the outcomes of it are spectacular.
Yeah, can be spectacular.
Can be spectacular. Yes. Thank you for your correction.
If facilitated or guided or led or whatever word you want to use in the right way, because it can also lead to burnout and total chaos.
It can, and I don't always think that things need to be facilitated. Even in my style of facilitation, I'm quite happy to let people figure things out for themselves. Otherwise, they end up constantly seeking permission, and the whole point of what we do as facilitators is to enable people to make their own decisions, obviously you course correct, but I'd much rather let people kind of work with it and interpret something and interrogate in their own way and be there as almost guide rails if they need that support.
That's exactly the definition of facilitation that I would apply. It's not telling them what to do, but providing the space and the structures, making it easier for them.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Future of Now that you launched due to the pandemic. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a series of workshops or talks. And maybe you can tell us a little bit the story behind it and what you've learned from it.
Okay, so what have we learned from this? So initially, the Future of Now was in person. And what I found in regards to the design thinking and this way of working of co-design and open innovation and all of this sort of stuff, it was a big shift in thinking for organizations. And I set Future of Now because we were doing it in person, was to go in. I used to travel to Melbourne quite a lot previous to the pandemic, slowly trying to figure out how to get back over there. And it was an opportunity for me to bring together a lot of different people that we knew. And as opposed to keep going around and telling everyone what we do, bring them all together and bring in interesting speakers to share and convey that message that what we're doing as well is quite a normal thing. And there's other ways you can do it. It's not just us. And we believe in it. And this is our tribe. And you're either in it or you're not. If you're not, stick with us. And the whole goal of it was to provide this safe space for executives. Mainly, there was a lot of our clients in there as well as other people that we were talking to as well. But providing them a safe space away from recruiters, away from people that were looking for students looking for jobs, and enabling them in their knowledge and their professional development to understand what agile is without having to outsource that problem to somebody in their team or needing to enroll in a course. How could they get an hour bite-sized snippet of what agile is, what lean thinking is, all this sort of stuff in a safe space? And also it was a bit of a two-fingered reaction to a lot of the adverts and the reports I was seeing all around this is the future strategy of 2034 and this of, it was always like, let's outsource our future. Let's not worry about it today. Let's just go and get another catalog or a brochure or whatever it might be telling us what the future of work looks like. And the future of now was a direct like FU. No, the future of now is happening now. It's no good keep putting it off. There's amazing people operating today doing incredible things, and it's your opportunity to do that as well. And it is super accessible. And that was the idea behind that platform. And that's why we call people like corporate rebels, technologists, innovators and futurists. And it was almost an unlock when it came to the pandemic, because I was terrified. We completely had to reset More Space for Light because the pandemic pretty much shut us down as facilitators. Nobody wants to do an in-person workshop. and also nobody wants to talk about innovation. They're in survival mode. So we were a luxury. So I had to figure out, how do we fit and how do we now provide value? And the future of now was an opportunity for us to learn and understand and play in this space. And it's just been such an enabler for us. We've had over 22 sessions now. We've had the most amazing speakers have given us so generous with their time and the way they're working. People like Rand Fishkin, Chris Nosal. We've had Paolo Caroli, Kai Haley from Google, Jim Cowback from Mural. All these people we've connected with, like yourself, Miriam, had conversations with, and now not just a community of people that participate in these talk shops. I've now built personal and professional connections and also facilitated professional and personal connections with other facilitators through the platform of Future of Now. Like I've got friends I've now call friends through this platform, and since then we're using it now to create trend reports. We've just launched a podcast as well that profiles our talk speakers as well, and it's just so much fun. It's just so much fun. It's just such a privilege.
Congratulations. And
well, we haven't. Congratulations. We haven't got to anywhere. This is a massive self-indulgent experiment, and it's mainly, it's a very selfish pursuit of meeting the most amazing people in the world and being able to connect with them. And they've all been super generous so far.
I can relate to that. Same here with the podcast.
Greetings, listeners. This June, Dancing with Markers is launching a new online self-paced course on visuals designed with facilitators in mind. Stop making boring, meaningless slide decks and start bringing visuals into your meetings in a fun, purposeful, and creative way that will have a real impact on improving the outcomes of your meeting. Visuals are central to facilitating engaging meetings, but so many facilitators and trainers lack a strong design muscle to create fun and purposeful flip charts, slides, and visual templates. For the facilitator who wants to incorporate better visuals into your meetings, this course is designed to transform you into a confident visual facilitator. Find the link to purchase in the show notes with a special 10% off coupon just for Workshops Work listeners. Now, back to the show.
And you said two things. You said that companies are always looking, or they're trying to outsource innovation. Awesome. As a catchphrase. And the other thing you said, that when the pandemic hit, corporations wouldn't even think, or they weren't interested in innovation because they were in survival mode. And I was wondering whether we can link these two ideas, because I think it's interesting that you mentioned before that innovation happens, you cannot plan innovation. And isn't the moment where we are forced in survival mode the moment actually where innovation hits us? So where do you see the line between the urge to outsource innovation and the fact that we are forced to innovate?
So let's start with where we're forced to outsource innovation. This is and then we'll come back and I might get you to just repeat that second question. One of the things I loved about the way we conducted design sprints was that we didn't make any high fidelity prototypes. And we recently just conducted a design sprint, and I was super intentional in regards to the fact that the prototype was very, very low fidelity. I've been very intentional by not using any swear words in your podcast out of respect.
You may.
But
I think all of our listeners are old enough.
Really?
Yes.
But it doesn't make me any cooler. Not that I'm cool already, but I was super intentional in regards to, I wanted the group to own the idea, and I wanted to ensure they were all on the same page. It wasn't about the outcome. And that kind of comes back to the thing that we loved, and the thing that we loved about design sprints, the thing that we loved about having the team go through the beats of the design sprint and creating the prototype and not being precious about it, is that these people in their roles, they're domain experts. They have creativity. It's about my role. How do I unlock this? And I think it's so easy for these organizations to get the big core consultancies to come in. Not that there's anything wrong with those big consultancies, but to get them to come in and take ownership of the future of their company, or to take ownership of the conversation and just bring them in when they need to. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of bias and there's a lot of legacy internally within an organization. But then I feel like what we do in our role as a facilitator is just kind of neutralize that and give people that platform to be able to have that conversation. I mean, anything that you do outsource should be the creme on top, because they provide domain knowledge of what's happened in industry. But then you can help coordinate an organization to bring in and leverage that in a way that they can use, as opposed to externally owning it and externally building it and handing it over as a finished product. And I think that's really, really important, that an organization takes charge of its strategy, takes charge of the people in the organization have a great idea of how it should run, where it should go, how it relates back to the vision.
Makes total sense. Thank you for that.
That's just my opinion. That doesn't mean our goal of More Space is to unlock creative capability and people's creative capacity. And that's something we see and something we measure. So
yeah, and how you phrased it, that the facilitator comes in to neutralize that and to give ownership back to the team. I think that's very strong. And you mentioned before the word futuring. And now I wonder whether futuring and innovation, or an innovation design sprint, is it the same? Or what is futuring?
What is futuring? Now, I've got to be very careful here, because I'm treading on thin ice. And it's the second time this week that I'm using a Guy Ritchie term from one of the Guy Ritchie movies.
I won't tell anyone.
No, don't, apart from everyone that listens. So I found out officially, like, I've met futurists in the past, but we've slowly been, through the future of now, we've met, ironically, of not wanting to think about the future and talk about now, but we've gone through this journey of meeting lots of futurists and getting a greater understanding and learning what we're doing with our workshops in regards to the products and services and tools that we're helping organizations create or conceptualize. We, in a way, are futuring, and our perspective or our angle of futuring, we're just using different language and we have a different approach. Maybe it doesn't have the same credibility as the futurist approach, where there's a lot of more deep research, because we're just running the facilitation part of it. But what I started to learn was it's very interesting how these two worlds can combine and merge together. So over the last 8 months, we've started to incorporate a lot of the tools of futuring in.
So tell us what futuring is.
What is futuring? To me, futuring is really building or speculating on a worldview, and then creating a new future. Creating a new future, whether that would be in a product, service, etc. But creating a vision, a concept, something tangible for people to have a conversation about, and for people to be able to base a vision on.
So it's basically, if I understand it correctly, sort of backward engineering. You envision the future, and then you backward engineer it so that you can get there?
Well, I'm trying not to go into the process of like all the backcasting and the world building and that. I'm just trying to tell you from my perspective and the way we're trying to incorporate futuring or the methods of futuring into our workshop facilitation, and what the way it's helped us enable the conversations, as opposed to this is what we're building right now. But actually, when you use the activity of the long-term vision, it's not being scared about going beyond the 5 years or the 3 years, but what does 20 years from now look like? And if we're looking at that 20 years, well, let's from a futuring perspective, if that's your benchmark or that's where you're looking at, let's now, including this program of work, an opportunity to build this worldview and validate, and then come back to you. And now that we have an understanding and we feel comfortable and we can see where things are going and these trends and drivers, let's design for that, or let's design for what we need now to move towards that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I should have said design for then, or design for now for what we need to get to then.
Yeah. From your experience, what makes a workshop fail?
People. Okay, see, let me clarify that, because I'm a person obviously as well, so I can make the workshop out. It's about not having the right people in the room and not having the challenge correctly defined. So if you come in with and I know there's problem framing to define the challenge, but if you're a little bit unsure of what the area of conversation is, there isn't like, this is actually the area we need to explore before we get into that problem framing space, and we don't have the right people who are invested, who care, and all the rest of it to have this conversation, you're not going to have much success. You're not going to move the needle so much, and you can't expect a great outcome with 3 hours.
And is it the responsibility of the facilitator or of the client to get the right people in the room and to make sure that you're talking about the right topic?
It's the responsibility of the facilitator to set up the conditions to enable the project owner to make the best decision they can to bring the right people in the room. So up until a point, a facilitator has to take responsibility that they've enabled the project leader to have a set of criteria to select the right people, and then from then on it's influence.
So what would you tell them who the right people are?
Well, we use problem framing to be able to do that. Whether that's an official problem framing workshop or it's a process of problem framing to help them, identify the right people.
So how do you get them from the problem framing to the right people? So because
the challenge itself, so a challenge statement itself details where, what, when in the business these sort of things are happening. And once you look at that, you understand the people that are wrapped around that. Now, they might not necessarily be all in that phase of the value chain, but they might be adjacent. They might influence that value chain, and they might be impacted by that value chain, that part of the value chains, whether it's physical or it's product based. And those are the right people because they're invested. And then you have to think about the other people that are impacted or influenced from an exec level, who they need to be involved. Is it part of their domain? And then once you understand where you are, and you also understand that product, service, process, whatever it might be, who that impacts, then you know the right people to start bringing in to test. And if you know the right area of the value chain, you then know who to outsource your domain experts to give, whether that's a global, macro, micro view of what's going on, whether that's external, internal, or at project level. So the cues of the challenge and a well-defined challenge will enable you to build the best, or give yourself the best possible opportunity for success, because you've identified the best people as far as you know to bring into that conversation.
Thank you. Very insightful. And now I wonder what is, whether you have kind of a sweet spot in terms of participants, because I have the impression that especially since we moved to the online workshop world, clients tend to over-invite.
Oh my gosh. I'm going through that at the moment. I'm seeing all these So we got a workshop coming up. So we do this 90-minute design sprint design sprint experience. And the reason we do it is just to kind of give people a bit of an understanding of what the design sprint experience is and get them to run through the process. And I'm getting all these emails of forwarded, accepted into the workshop. And I'm trying from a logistics point of view. I'm like, how many Post-it pads am I going to need? How many Sharpies am I going to need? So if I'm right, your question was going to be, what's the sweet spot for the number of people? So there's a curve or a graph I have. More people, less specific the outcome. So specificity, one of those words I can't say, to general as an outcome on one axis, and less people to more people. So that kind of, as more people, less general is the outcome, because you always have to cater almost for the lowest common denominator in the room.
I love that. And I'm happy that you shared it with the audience, because I think it's also a very easy tool to just communicate with clients when they start to over-invite. Because I think for a kind of training workshop where you try to explain or make them experience what a design sprint is, sure, there can be more people coming. But if you're really crafting a solution or alignment, I guess if you have those who are just invited because if we don't invite him or her, then maybe we have some conflict, and to avoid the conflict, let's invite them. But if we invite them, we also need to invite the others. And suddenly you have this large group of maybe people who are not within the circle that you mentioned beforehand, who are relevant for the workshop outcome.
Absolutely. And you look at the outcome of that, they're not invested, they just say their idea, they derail. So people love stats, people love, quant. So we call it workshop economics. It's a term, a TM, workshop economics with more space. The more people, the less time. So if you think of it in a soccer match, so I used to play 11-a-side football or soccer. As I said before, sorry for all the people in Europe that I've just off-put. I'm from England, so I've kind of conditioned myself, because whenever you say footy, somebody else has a different interpretation of it. But whatever game you play in a team sport, you don't have much time on the ball. Most of the time you have on the pitch is trying to get into position. You're not going to get on the ball. You're not going to score the 3 goals. So the more people you have in the room, less time they're going to have to speak, the more insights there's going to have to be to sift through. And, and like once you start working out the workshop economics of of a 3-hour session where you could possibly run, you want to deep dive into 2 topics, you could most probably run 2 activities. And then you've got a 15-minute break, and then you've got 10 to 15 minutes either side of that. And then you think about that once you start breaking that down, you might use some liberating structures, 1, 2, 4, all. And then once you time that, depending on the amount of people, you're only going to have like 2 minutes to talk. So that 2 minutes must be the best 2 minutes, like you almost have to be like Simon Cowell from the pop star thing, where if it's not good, you're out of here. But see, if you have less people, you can spend more time discussing, debating, observing, reflecting, and adjust, as opposed to relying so much on the structure of the workshop, because you have to get all these people through. And people don't, kids, adults, no one transitions. People find it really hard to transition.
I once read an article that the best change processes are the ones that communicate or emphasize what stays the same.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Because people have comfort. They're like, yep, okay, so I'm all right with that.
This stays, okay, cool. This little change, sure, can deal with that.
Yeah, I can deal with that. that. Yeah, you just got to be careful where you do it. You slip in the big change with the same thing. So we're going to keep the colour green, but we're all going to go underwater. Oh, cool, we've got green. Yeah, but we're all like, yeah. So
give them a little anchor.
Yeah, exactly.
And to come back to the participants, and I think how to choose the participants who would be in the workshop is very important. And you talked about those who are affected and engaged. And I wonder to what extent it's also important to invite people who are the troublemakers, those who don't agree, the sand in the wheel.
We don't invite them. We just want everyone to be happy. No, I'm joking. I think they're good. They're really good. Well, actually, we had a 30-person workshop 2 weeks ago, and we had one person that stood up and they were just like, I do not see the point of this. This isn't going so well. Like, this isn't relevant. We didn't expect this conversation, blah, blah, blah. And I don't not say blah, blah, blah to disrespect them, but you get the general gist. Yeah. And I could feel them sucking the energy out of the room. However, I felt it was really important for them to have their say, because the energy that they're kind of putting out there by being quiet or even being vocal, it gives people the opportunity to say, actually, no, this is relevant as well. And also they feel comfort in the fact that they've got a forum to be able to share. I do think it's really important that there's a healthy kind of friction in the room. If somebody's completely opposed, it's not the purpose of the workshop to kind of revolutionize them and make them see this great thing that they've never seen before. Because you have to, it comes back to having there's healthy antagonism, and there's people that just will not be part of the process, that just don't want to play ball and will prevent any kind of good outcome.
So how did you deal with this one person who said, I don't see the point in this?
I'll give you a couple of examples, actually, because a couple of workshops. So this person in particular, I listened to them, I let them speak, and I could feel the energy around them where people really strongly disagreed. And I felt, and I wanted them to share, because I felt it got a good opportunity for the group to self-organize and course correct. Otherwise, they would have held on to it, and they would have, made the outcome of the workshop beyond the workshop really toxic and kind of spread like, this isn't right, and they would have done it without people being able to respond in the context of the environment. So I let them, but as they were talking, I can feel more and more the energy of the room that just did not agree. And I could see the project owner really getting quite frustrated. However, once they'd shared, they had nothing left to say. So I didn't need to return to them. And they could see from the rest of the room that the rest of the room were invested. They were engaged. They saw value, and they basically had to eat the frog. They made, not by me, they could see that they just got on with the work, and they continued to progress through it. They'd shared, they'd been able to voice their opinion. Another example, we ran a workshop with a team, and they were looking to shape an organisation, and they were looking to revolutionise and move into the future. However, the people in the room that had to be in the room weren't necessarily the people that would take them to the next phase. So we did things like persona mapping previous, and we came in and we wanted to hold a discussion around the personas, and the people in the room basically said, I do not know why you went and did that, because we know what they were going to say. We could have told you what they were going to say. And then as we held this discussion, the same people were like, everything they said is a load of rubbish. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, we got to the end of the workshop, and I thought, because it was a 3-part series workshop, in my mind, I was like, we're not going back. They're not going to call us back. However, the project leader, the person that was in charge of it, we had a really good, genuine conversation off the back of it. And it allowed us to reinforce the fact we need the right people in the room going forwards, because we're not going to make any progress. This is a waste of everyone's time. We need the right people. And it helped us position ourselves in a way to enable that conversation to happen with the right people, because the project leader trusted us more to help them get to the outcome they need in regards to looking to the future and having that conversation.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite exercise that you do in your workshops?
My favorite exercise in the workshop, I reckon it's the energizer, because it sets the tone for me. The energizer for me that we use, and it's almost like my default, it's 1, 2, 3, clap, click, stomp. Have you heard of that?
Walk us through.
So and it's a real big one for me, because it sets the tone, and I don't always use it. I wouldn't go in all the time cold. Maybe the day 2, But I'll tell you another one as well after. So this one is just an energizer, and it changes the energy in the room. It gets everyone physical. It gets them looking and engaged. And they get in pairs, and they go 1, and the next person goes 2, and the next person goes 3, and then you introduce a clap, 2, 3, and then you introduce a click, 3, and then it's a clap, a click, stop. And then you get them to, celebrate their failures as well. And they shout out woohoo, and we get them to practice the woohoo. And it's all about, facing the fear and accepting failure, and also putting yourself out there to be vulnerable because you're doing something that isn't normal. And it also sets the tone for the conversation that's going to take place, because I'm going to move you out your comfort zone. And now that you're out of your comfort zone, you're in my world. And you're in my world now, you're going to kind of play in this way and in this space. And it's really interesting for me because it's also a leap of faith. It's a leap of faith for them to trust me. And it's a leap of faith for me to see if they're going to trust, because they could turn around and they'd be like, I'm not doing this. But so far, everybody's done it. Yeah. And it always, everyone's got smiles, they're invested, they're ready to go. The other one is called the ball of truth. And I've got this old rugby ball, my kids' it's actually a footy ball for my kids. So already, being English, I'm in Australia, I've got a footy ball, it's my kids. I'm pulling all the emotional heartstrings here. And the ball of truth, and what we do is we pass it around the room, and whoever catches it has to tell their feelings, how they feeling, what's going on, where are you up to with the workshop, what's wrong, that sort of thing. And it's been really, really effective because people hold on to the ball and they're able to share where they wouldn't have felt so confident before. They're really, really good. They're really good work energizers.
And then the ball of truth, you would use it to kind of as a temperature check?
Yeah, that's it. So we'd use it maybe after a break, after a big revelation. Usually I'd like a break because I like people to be able to percolate and actually think about the conversation that's taken place, because sometimes it might move them into an uncomfortable space. So they might want to push back, and they might want to course correct, or they might want to say something that was missed, or after lunch as well, when they've had the time to process.
Yeah. Do you also do this online?
How do we do it online? I think we do it like pass the mic. We use the pass the mic. That's how we do it there.
Yeah. If someone in the audience fell asleep after minute 2, just woke up and doesn't have time to listen to the entire show again, what would you like them to walk away with?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I think the role of a facilitator is a big deal. As we continue to grow as leaders and in different domains, I do think that people should take workshops. I know that they're oversaturated, but I do think people should take the role of a facilitator as something with an incredible amount of credibility, because that role itself enables the most amazing conversations, and itself is a skill and a discipline.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your experience and walking us through some processes of your work that were very hands-on and helpful, I think.
Oh, no, thank you for having us.
Thank you for staying tuned and listening to the show. I appreciate your attention, as I know how busy you are. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and engage by sharing your comments and thoughts, and visit workshops.work to download the one-page summary. I'm looking forward to seeing you back at the next episode, and I wish you a fruitful day.